JT's 6th 100-yard game of the season. And then check this one out. All-time single-game team record for rushing yards, 335 yards off. Everybody, man. The offensive line, the tight ends, the receivers, Anthony, all you guys sticking together and fighting through. Hey, we found a way to get the dub. Hey, and we're not done, man. Yeah, do we need some help? We need some help. But we got to come back to work this week, ready to freaking go. Because you never know, man. Guys that have been around this league for a long time, some wild happen. It's some wild, but we got to do our part. We got to do our part. JT, break it down, man.
Hey, that's the way to fight. Like he said, it doesn't matter about any of the external factors. All we got to do is handle our business each and every single week. Proud of y'all boys. Listen, we're going to enjoy this one, but we got to get ready to go back to work next week. We got to keep fighting, man. Let's go. Let's go, man. Family on 3. 1, 2, 3.
That's how you tough that thing, boy.
You're listening to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast with Mike Chappell and Dave Griffiths.
Pretty jubilant Colts locker room after the 38-30 win over the Tennessee Titans at Lucas Oil Stadium. This was the winter whiteout game for the Colts. They really needed this one. Their playoff hopes are still alive. They are not. They are certainly not guaranteed. They are not great at all by any stretch of the imagination. They need a lot of help to get in. But you know what? If they lose, it doesn't matter. And they came out. They were up 38-7 in this game. Let things get a little too interesting at the end for my taste and pretty much for everybody's taste. But you know what? At the end of the day, they got a great game from Jonathan Taylor. They got a good game, for the most part, from the defense. We'll say about 2.5 quarters of really good football from the defense, aside from perhaps the Titans' first drive, one of the Titans' early drives. And the Colts didn't have to do a lot in the passing game because they had a lot of road graders out there in the running game, and their offensive line played very, very well. Jonathan Taylor ran the ball well. Anthony Richardson ran the ball well. You got a great effort from the offensive line. You got a really good effort from the tight ends and the wide receivers, because it just doesn't happen where you just hand the ball off to your running back and he runs. And I know that a couple of times, a 65-yard run and a 70-yard run for Jonathan Taylor, it looks like he just takes the ball and runs. But, you know, schematically, he needs the help of his teammates in order to pull off those big runs, and they were able to do that this week. Again, they needed it. They improved to 7-8 on the season now. And, we'll talk a little bit more playoffs when we do our podcast later in the week to preview the upcoming game against the New York Giants. But essentially what the Colts have to do is they have to win out, and that is without a doubt. They lose one more game, then it's over. You can kiss the playoffs goodbye. But if they can win out, they need a lot of other teams to finish 9-8. The more teams that finish 9-8 with the Colts, the better the Colts are going to be off, because they will have the multi-team tiebreaker is going to be conference record, and they will have a better conference record than some of those teams. So, than all of those teams, as a matter of fact. So they could still get into the playoffs as long as Cincinnati, Miami, Denver, and the Chargers all finish at 9-8. The scenario that you don't want to see is for the Colts to win out and for the Broncos to lose the rest of their games, and those be the only two teams competing for that last playoff spot. Because if that's the case, Denver owns the head-to-head tiebreaker over the Colts by virtue of beating them last week. You know, we talked about that game, 31-13. The Colts were in control of that one. Jonathan Taylor dropped the ball. We all talked about it and know all about that from last week. So that could be a crippling loss if it turns out that Denver ends up at 9-8 and the Colts end up at 9-8, and they're the only two teams that end up 9-8. Then the Broncos would get in because of that disaster last week. However, if Miami finishes 9-8 and the Broncos fall to 9-8 and the Colts win out at 9-8, then the Colts are in. You need that multi-team tiebreaker, so that gets rid of the head-to-head between the Colts and the Broncos and opens up to conference record, which the Colts, by virtue of having one out, if they do indeed do that, would have the best conference record of the available teams, and they would have the tiebreaker. The other scenario that would be good for the Colts is if the Chargers lose out. The Chargers have to lose their last remaining games. It seems unlikely. They play the New England Patriots and the Las Vegas Raiders. Both those teams are disasters, and the Chargers, have been good enough to be where they are. That Thursday night game, I mean, really, the Broncos, if you want to blame anybody for the Colts being where they are, I mean, blame the Colts, obviously. But if you don't want to blame the Colts and you want to blame another team for the Colts' misfortunes here in their efforts to get to the postseason, you can pin it on the Denver Broncos, because the Colts lost the head-to-head with the Broncos last week. That really hurt their playoff hopes there. And then, the Broncos had a chance on Thursday Night Football to beat the Chargers. And if they'd won that game, then that, it's not out of the realm of possibility even for the Chargers to lose their last two games. I think it's unlikely based on their opponents. But I think if they had lost that game to the Broncos last Thursday, then, it's possible that they may drop one of those two games. But to have both of them losses to the Chargers, barring some sort of, grievous injury, and that's also giving credit to this Colts team for being able to win out. And, this was a dominant game of football for the Colts for, 70% of the game. But then they just kind of went soft on defense. They took Taylor out on offense because they thought they had the game won, at least in my opinion. And then, they just kind of little by little let the Titans back into this game, which you really didn't want to see. It should not have come down to Kenny Moore picking a pass off essentially with no time left on the clock in order to win this game. But again, winning in the NFL is hard. We've seen it all season for the Colts. They've been in a ton of these one-score games, and even when things were going good for this team and they're up 38-7 and things are just looking great, there's always that creeping dread. Oh, well, the offense isn't being effective right now. The defense is playing soft, and they're missing tackles, and they're letting Tajay Spears get into the end zone. And you kind of have that creeping dread sometimes when you watch this football team, and it's that you've had this season, and it's because most of these games in the NFL are close. They are close by design. They want people to, they don't want 41-7 games. They don't, because people aren't going to sit and watch those, except for the diehardest of diehard fans on both sides. So you want to keep things interesting, and that's kind of how the season has gone for the Colts. They didn't have to use Anthony Richardson a lot this week in the passing game. He was 7-11, 131 yards, had a touchdown pass to Josh Downs. It was a little swing pass to the side. Josh Downs then kind of tiptoed his way down the sideline, got in the end zone. He was sacked one time. His rating was 97. He did have an interception, and I think it was one of those cases where he made a little bit of he made a late read, tried to get the ball over the middle to Drew Ogletree, but by that time he didn't bother to look off any other receivers or any other defenders, and the safety came down and undercut that throw. So it was late, and then the safety made a nice play on it. So, it does happen from time to time, and they got what they needed from Richardson this week in the passing game. He did have a nice 36-yard completion to Adonai Mitchell this week. It was a tough catch, man. It was just a little extended. Mitchell got it out there, managed to cradle that ball, go to the ground. They did take a second look at that, but because tip of that ball hit the ground, but the officials believe that Mitchell was able to corral that thing and keep that ball from moving, that he had control of it when it hit the ground, which is, what is a catch? Nobody knows anymore. But it was a good rebound effort from Mitchell. It was really his only catch of the day. His only target of the day, actually. He was filling in for Alec Pierce, who was out this week with a concussion. But he made the most of it. And so it was nice to see him have a rebound after the trick play last week, and a lot of people, myself included, just really critical of the decision process on that one. So good to see him bounce back. And then Jonathan Taylor. I mean, what can you say about the guy? He had a good game last week, but it was all marred by that touchdown that he just, had the mental lapse to just, again, the compulsion to just want to get rid of the football as you're sniffing the goal line is something I've never really understood. This week he made sure that didn't happen. His first long touchdown run, 65 yards, he ran into the tunnel, reminiscent of a Bo Jackson or maybe even Forrest Gump, if you will, just running, making sure that you run the ball all the way through, and he did equally on his other touchdown runs because he had 2 more. He had a 70-yarder, and then he had a short touchdown run later in the game as well. So a good effort for him. 29 yards, 29 carries for 218 yards. That's an average of 7.5 a carry. Also, he had those 3 touchdowns, long of 70 in this game, and just super productive. JT rounding into form as if, we had talked a little earlier in this season, Dave Griffiths and I specifically, about, the thing you want to see from Jonathan Taylor is the long touchdown runs. He's your home run hitter, and you need those things. That's his game. That's part of his game. Yeah, he can do the steady 5-yard, 10-yard, 3-yard grinded out stuff too. But while you got him in there and he's doing that stuff, eventually you want him to pop one of those, whether that's a 15 or a 20-yard or just taking it to the house. And it felt like that had been missing from his game this year. And then we've seen it the last couple of weeks with some really good interior blocking, just a really good job. Tight ends and offensive line. Kudos getting into the second level. Even you see some of our wide receivers out there. Some of the Colts wide receivers doing the same thing. Just really getting out there and getting on guys. And then Taylor, if a guy hesitates for just a split second, Taylor's gone. He's just got that world-class speed. So it was good rebound effort from him. Richardson also effective on the ground. He had a 29-yard run. He had a touchdown run this week, 9 carries for 70 yards. So almost an 8-yard a carry clip for him. And it is a dangerous option. And, the Colts are really going to kick themselves. I don't think that things are going to play out the way the Colts want to for the end of the season. They just need so much help from a lot of teams. But it's still mathematically possible, all right? But they are going to be kicking themselves time and time again for this game that they lost by 1 possession, one that they lost by a field goal and a couple of points here because they only needed – it's going to come out to this. They're only going to need 1 more win to get into the playoffs. If they win out and they go 9-8, if they could have gone 10-7, 100%, not 100%, but they would have been in. But it's probably not going to be the case this year for them. But again, stranger things have happened. They just need, like I said, Miami and Cincinnati. Colts want them to keep winning. Chargers and the Broncos, they want them to keep losing. And if those things can play out, the Colts still have a chance to get in. But they have got to take care of business next week against the New York Giants. Let's go through a few more statistics here. Let's look at our wide receivers. Josh Downs, 3 catches for 61 yards. He had a couple really big plays, and this one, that guy is just so good. 31-yard was his long on that one, 4 targets on the day. Of course, like I said, Richardson only had to throw the ball 11 times this week. And I don't think the game plan necessarily for the Colts was don't let Anthony Richardson throw the ball. I think the game plan for the Colts was we're going to run the ball, see what happens with the run game, and if it's working, you just stay with it. And for the Colts, it was working. A franchise record, 335 yards rushing as a team in this game, the majority of that coming from Richardson and Taylor. Trey Sermon, 8 carries for 25 yards, 3.1 average. Tyler Goodson, 4 for 22 yards. I am continually surprised, amazed, curious as to how that the ball goes to Trey Sermon, because I see a burst from Jonathan Taylor. I see a burst from Tyler Goodson in the few times he gets the ball. When I see Trey Sermon get the ball, it just feels like he's met at the line of scrimmage and he's going down. He had a decent run. He had a 7-yard carry in this game. But also, why are those guys running the ball in the first place? I know that, they don't want want JT to carry the ball 50 times. I do understand that. But I do feel like the Colts took the foot off the accelerator, both on offense and defense in this game. They did have a 38-7 lead, but again, nothing's guaranteed. And, you give up a couple of big plays, you give up some 2-point conversions, and suddenly, you're sweating this thing out at the end in a game that you shouldn't be sweating things out. Back to receivers, you had Mitchell, the 1 catch for 36 yards, Pittman with a couple catches for 19, including a key conversion when the Colts needed to chop some clock. Because that's the thing. At the end of this game, because it was an 8-point game, the Colts needed to chop some clock, and they needed to get Tennessee to use all their timeouts, and they were at least able to do that for the most part and punt with about 10 seconds left in the game. Mo Alley Cox, 1 catch for 15 yards, and no catches for Ogletree this week, although he did have that target, and that was the one that ended up with the interception. On the defensive side of the ball, leading tackler was actually Jalen Carlisle this week, the reserve linebacker for the Colts, the rookie. He had 10 tackles this week. Zaire Franklin with 7, DeForest Buckner with a couple of drives there where he just blew things up for the Colts and just ruined the Titans' day a couple of times here. And I know 5 tackles, I mean, that's pretty good for a defensive tackle, but it doesn't necessarily jump off the page. But when you look back and you think of the things that DeForest Buckner did in this game, it's definitely a bigger than his stats would necessarily tell you. Jalen Jones, 4 tackles. Kwity Paye, 4 tackles. He did have a sack, so for all of you Sack Nugs fans out there, you'll be able to get in that deal this week. Grover Stewart, Laiatu Latu also with a couple of with 4 tackles each. And then the Colts did force 3 turnovers. They were +2 this week. They had the interception from Richardson, but then Kenny Moore picked off a key pass, and then he picked off a pass in the game. And then Samuel Womack, who nearly had an interception, a couple plays later ended up getting his interception. He's been a nice addition to this team. Again, a guy that wasn't even on the roster to start things off. Kenny Moore's interception before halftime, it's probably hyperbole to say that decided the game, but it was really, really big because they were able to cash in on that with the touchdown, and that gave them a 24-7 edge at halftime, and the Colts had the ball to start the second half, and that was exactly what you kind of want to do if you're the offensive team, or if you're if you can plan it that way when you defer in the second half, where you have the ball to score points at the end of the first half, and then you get the ball to start the second half, and if you can conjure some points, you really make things tough on the other team, and that's exactly what the Colts did. It took them all of one play in the second half to make it a 31-7 game, and that was a 70-yard touchdown for Taylor. So, all in all, you would like for the Colts to have won a couple of those games this year earlier that they could have won, the one-loss games or the one-score games, because if they had been able to get those, they would have just been in a much better place. And especially that Denver game last week. They had that game. It could have been 20-7. They literally dropped the ball in it. Jonathan Taylor did. And that's going to probably come away and haunt them as they hope for some help to get into the playoffs. But generally speaking, pretty solid game from the Colts. I think I would have liked them to have hammered down a little more in the second half. Taking Taylor out, it's okay to spell him for the drive. They used him a lot, right? Spell him for a drive, but we saw Trey Sermon and Tyler Goodson in there and back-to-back drives for the Colts, and just, I would rather they, I'd rather they put Taylor in those situations. And when things got a little bit too close for their comfort, then, they did go back to him. But at that point, they were really loading up on that run, and there just wasn't a whole lot of room there. And that's where, kind of the system that they've got and the way that Richardson is in the passing game right now, that's where it really does kind of hurt you. Because if you can't get that run game going, then, there's just not much that you can do. Because you would think if they're stacking the box with 8 or 9 guys, right, that then you've got some one-on-ones on the outside, or you've got the chance to get some guys open underneath, and is your quarterback able to hit those passes? Well, at this phase in his career, the answer to that is there's a 47% chance that he can hit those passes. So, I understand it, but you know what? I've talked enough. Let's hear from Colts coach Shane Steichen.
I'll start with the injuries. Trey Flowers has a shoulder, and Jalen Jones has a throat.
Overall, obviously would love to finish better, but to get a team win right there against a division opponent is huge, with 2 games left. I thought offensively, running the football, 335 on the ground was phenomenal. Great job by the guys up front, JT hitting the home runs, obviously Anthony as well, but everyone being involved, the tight ends, the receivers blocking, was huge.
So bad on the first possession. I'm kidding.
Sometimes you don't know, and then next time you know, it's good.
With Jalen, is it anything serious? We just don't hear throat very often.
Yeah, I don't know. I have no update. I just know it's throat.
Did you come in thinking you'd run it this many times, or how did that play out?
Yeah, I mean, you want to be able to run it every game, but obviously it was going good. It was going good, and guys were popping it, and credit to our offensive staff, Jim Bob Cooter and Tony and Tommy and all those guys, and getting it wired up. Phenomenal job by those guys, and obviously the guys up front wired up, and then the defense getting the 3 takeaways was big. To get that takeaway that Kenny had at the end of half, and then to score right there and be able to double dip, with the obviously getting the ball to start the third quarter was huge.
The way JT responded after last week and obviously the blown.
Phenomenal. I don't think he could have responded any better. He was phenomenal all day. All day.
Those plays where he's just outrunning everybody, and it's just a glimpse into kind of what your offense can be when you set it up that way.
100%. I think there's going to be games that go like that on the ground, and obviously it went really well. It was obviously I think it was the most in franchise history rushing yards. Is that right? Yeah. So single. Yeah, that's incredible. So again, it's impressive.
What goes through your mind when you see him break away and just have an open field in front of him?
I'm just smiling, saying he's gone. So it's fun to watch.
What did getting Ryan Kelly back, especially against that front that's got Simmons and Sweat in there?
Yeah, it's huge to get a veteran guy like that that's done it at a high level. The communication that he brings, the leadership that he brings up front for us was big for us, and obviously it showed today.
Did Anthony throw the interception just a little bit late? It looked like the tree might have been open earlier.
Yeah, I got to look back at it. It was just a backside safety, I think, got involved in it.
And did that play any role in how every run you went after that?
No, not necessarily. I mean, we did. Then we just started popping them. We were running it really good. So it's like when something's working, you're not going to get away from it.
Why did you take JT out there in like the third quarter?
Yeah, we were up pretty good, and then they got back in a little bit, so put him back in.
Do you regret, I guess, maybe taking the foot off the gas, or?
I've talked to a lot of coaches over the years and kind of how the game was going. Our defense was rolling pretty good there too, and then obviously we were running it pretty good, and then they started to get back in it, and we don't want that to happen, and so we had to adjust there at the end.
You mentioned you weren't going to get away from it, but they probably kind of knew you were going to run it quite a bit as the game went on. Just what does it say about the line and then the coaching that you're still able to run it successfully?
Yeah, I think just that determination, knowing that they're going to be these 8-man fronts and saying, hey, like we're going to drag this thing out, bleed the clock a little bit there, and that's kind of how the game went.
There was such a drastic shift defensively, like kind of letting them back into the game.
I don't know. I think they hit the big play. They hit a big play there, but we got to go back and look at that so it doesn't happen.
Was this kind of like an identity game for you, maybe? Just like with the power game you played?
Yeah, I think so. I think, I think everything was kind of clicking there, and those are hard to come by sometimes in this league, but the guys up front offensively were just rolling. I mean, it was rolling. I mean, we were popping the big ones, and we were close on a few other ones too, and so we knew it was there, and obviously we popped them there. So it was good for our guys to bounce back, the way they did after last week.
What was different about Kenny's game today? I know that last interception was kind of just, cherry on top, but he has his game today.
He's always plays great. I love everything about Kenny, what he brings to this team, his leadership. Obviously, getting that interception right before the half was huge to set the offense up to score points there, and then obviously to finish it out there was big. So, he did a hell of a job.
You guys have to win out. You got one.
Yep.
How is this a nice little reset after last week and just kind of a relief going into
Yeah, I think it's huge. We got to handle our business. We know that, we need some help going forward, but we got to control what we control, and that's, getting ready for the New York Giants.
Talk about the rushing game. What did you think about Josh Downs' tightrope act to kind of break the game open?
Yeah, that was great. I was standing right there on the sidelines, but I knew he was in, but it was close. But to get that touchdown there was huge.
Only 11 attempts for Anthony Richardson, but how nice is it that he can fit, if you're going to run heavy, like, obviously he has a role in that too, to be able to kind of do either one.
Yeah, no, it's big. Obviously, to add that element of his run game into that was huge. He had some good runs for us all day, so him and JT back there is huge.
Do you think that one popped early kind of greased the wheels a little bit for JT?
Yeah, it could have. I can't say for sure, but I think, everything was kind of rolling there pretty good. So, again, credit to offensive coaching staff, offensive line, all those guys.
Why do you think this team has had so much much issues with just tackling this season, especially in a game like today where they kind of got back in it?
I don't know. We got to go look back at it. We'll see the tape, on some of those. Some of those you give credit to the other guys too for making a play, but I'll go back and look at it.
Anthony's had some misses on some throws where guys have been open this year, but on that gotta have it one on the 3rd and 8, just to be able to step into that throw, make it accurate. Just what did that show you?
It was big time. It was big time. We needed that in that moment to keep the ball there, threw it on rhythm, on time. Obviously, threw it to Pitt right there to get the first down was huge.
That was Indianapolis Colts coach Shane Steichen reacting to the team's 38-30 win over the Tennessee Titans. It does keep the Colts' playoff hopes alive. Again, they have no shot at winning the division, so they would have to get it as a wild card. And they, as I explained earlier in the podcast, I won't go over it again, but they need a lot of help to get in. They need certain teams to win, and they need certain teams to lose. And without a doubt, 100%, the Colts themselves have got to beat the Giants, and then they've got to beat the Jaguars. And can you imagine if the Colts are in a scenario in which they have to beat the Jacksonville Jaguars to get into the playoffs again? My goodness, it's a thing that is possible. But some of this will be sorted out within the next week or two, and so that game could end up being meaningless. It just really depends on how some of the things shake out in the AFC. Well, as far as the Colts are concerned, they do move to 7-8 on the season. They've got a shot at least a winning record this year, which, I think the expectations were that the Colts could be a little bit better than that this season, that they would be able to certainly get in that 10-7 range. I thought that they could, and we'll do plenty of season postmortems once the season's done, because that's all we'll have to talk about, because the football will have been done on the field, and we'll have to talk about Colts' future moves. Dave alluded to it in the podcast last week. What do you do with Ballard and Steichen, and is Richardson your future quarterback? These are all the conversations that the franchise and its fans are going to have once the season is concluded, although some are already having those conversations. And after last week's, disaster against Denver, I think I can understand those types of discussions, because it was very disheartening to see that game go the way that it did, when the Colts really had an opportunity to state their case definitively for a playoff spot, whereas, again, they need tons of help to get in. But I mean, Miami and Cincinnati, those teams definitely, they just want to win, and they know that they have an outside shot, just like the Colts have an outside shot. Those teams are waiting for the Colts to lose, because that's one of the ways that they can get in. And then they're also hoping, for the worst for the Chargers and the Broncos. So it's going to be an interesting, and we do have a head-to-head between the Broncos and the Bengals, I think, next week. So that'll be a big game for both those teams, and something that the Colts will certainly be watching as well. But again, you don't want that situation where there are two teams vying for one playoff spot, and it's the Colts and the Broncos, because then that head-to-head from that terrible game last week comes into play, and the Colts would be on the outside looking in on that one. But you know what? All they can do now is go out, play their football games, and try to win them. And again, I talked about it. I didn't like throttling down, going with the soft defensive coverage, and just not really making it very determinate on offense. They just kind of slowed everything down, and we're just going to try to bleed the clock. And they had a big lead. They did. It was 38-7 in this game. But, things can change quickly. And they didn't have the big turnover, thankfully, and that was not part of the comeback effort for the Titans, was not turnovers from the Colts in that second half. But, they just gave up plays. We had Jalen Jones left the game, and then they had a backup in, and that guy got a face mask penalty and a pass interference on the same play, which is, something I've only seen a handful of times in many, many years of watching football. So kudos to that guy for having that happen to him. When you saw that, you just kind of felt like, oh boy, what is going on with this team here? But they were able to hold on and win the game. So good again. that's all they can do right now is go out, try to take care of business the best they can, and, continue to develop it. And I do go back to thinking of some of these early games that the Colts had this season where they were just so close, or even games where the Colts were flat out bad. Like that game against Green Bay in week 2 comes to mind. Colts were bad in that game. Like the offense was terrible, turned the ball over a lot, couldn't move the ball, and it was a 1-score game, right? And that's one they could have won. The first game of the year against Houston was a 1-score game. Losing to Jacksonville, that was a Flacco game, I think. That one hurt as well. That second Houston game, 3-point game, the Buffalo game, that probably one of their legitimately lost that game, but it was still closer in many respects than maybe we thought. Detroit was, just a bad game in general, but that's one of the league's best teams, and really the ones that haunt are the Colts are probably Houston game, the Green Bay game, and then the Denver game, because those were all games in which they were winnable games for the Colts, and they just didn't seize the opportunity. And if they had just gotten one of those games, would have been better. But again, a pretty good day for Anthony Richardson. He didn't have to do a lot in the passing game. They did ask him to convert a big third down to Michael Pittman Jr. late in the game, and they were able to hook up on that one, and that was something that allowed them to chew some more clock and force Tennessee to use the rest of their timeouts so they could really, really run the clock down and make sure that Tennessee didn't get the ball in decent field position with much time left on the clock. They're just, by the time Tennessee got the ball at the end of the game, the odds were very, very much in the Colts' favor. So at least they were able to do that. Had a good ground game for Richardson, and you just kind of wish we'd seen this type of offense. I mean, you're not going to run 335 yards every week, right? But you just kind of wish you'd seen a little bit more of that type of offense against the Colts, for the Colts, because it would have been, instead of having some of these games where it felt like Richardson was throwing the ball 30 or 40 times, just like, this is not the strength of the guy that you've got back there. And when you're Shane Steichen and your whole reputation is built on tailoring offenses to fit your personnel, designing that Jalen Hurts offense that was really big in Philadelphia and helping the development of that guy, that's what we wanted to see in Indianapolis. And I do think, it's easy to look back and this is essentially a rookie season for Richardson. And I will say, the Colts are 7-8. They've got a chance to finish above 500 for the second year in a row. And this has been a key developmental year for Richardson. Remember, the guy only made a handful of starts in college. He's only made these starts. He only played in 4 games last year for the Colts before the injury. He had a little bit of an injury concern this year, and then he got benched because, some sort of gaps in the preparation for his game and that sort of thing. But this is a young guy who is still learning the pro game. And trust me, I am not satisfied with a 47% completion percentage. It's got to be better. But he's also, in order to get there, he's got to play. And the Colts have been so close in all of these games. And you can rake Gus Bradley over the coals as much as you want. And you can talk about poor offensive execution all that you want. And I'm not saying that I just want a mediocre football team to be mediocre. But the Colts are not as far away as you would necessarily think about getting into the playoffs. And it's kind of ridiculous to think about that, right? Because we've seen this defense just kind of not be dominant. We've seen the offense just go into these comas where it's 3 and out and 3 and out and 3 and out and 3 and out. And it's not the way I prefer to play, obviously, but like the Colts are still in the mix despite some of their shortcomings. And so some of that does come down, I think, to personnel, and that's something they're going to have to take a real good look at the offseason. But development of Anthony Richardson, key this year, and we've seen some good things. We've also seen some regression So, it's a mixed bag. But we knew it would be a roller coaster, right? A roller coaster that got him benched, and then he came back, won a couple of games in some clutch moments. I mean, I know they're not good teams, right? But what he did against the Jets and what he did against the Patriots, those were money moments for a team that was desperately needing wins. And he came through in those moments. But then you see things like what happened against Denver. And that wasn't all on Richardson, obviously. But you see things like that happen. And you see this kind of comeback effort from the Titans because the Colts kind of go into this offensive coma again. And it does make you have some concerns. I'm not saying everything's hunky-dory and everything's great here, but it's sort of staggering that the way the NFL is set up, that even as much as the Colts have struggled in many respects, they're still right in the thick of it. It's kind of crazy the more and more you think of it. But hey, listen, I have talked enough. Let's hear from Colts quarterback Anthony Richardson.
Just let me ask that though. When he gets into that second, third level, and you're just watching him pull away, what is that like?
That's amazing, man. I know he's been, looking to have one of these type of games all year. I know our O-line's been looking to, be able to help him out like that. But just seeing it happening is just surprising because, that guy's really good. So I'm glad we were able to, make that happen for him.
You guys had a game like this somewhat, last week until it changed. But how did it feel today to the two of you to run as much as you did to finish the deal and win this game?
I felt good just doing whatever we had to do, just to get the W. But it turned out way better than we expected. The O-line did a great job opening up the holes, and JT, did the rest. So that feels good whenever we can just move the ball as an offense and just play complementary football.
You remember the last time you only threw 11 passes to win the game?
I'm not sure. I normally don't keep track of how many attempts I have, but I'm glad we were able to run the ball today and get the dub.
With what happened with Jonathan last week, how big was it for you guys to just kind of rally around him this week?
Nah, it's great. We never, think about the past too much because it's football, it's life. Adversity is going to hit you, one way or another. So it's about how you bounce back from it, and I feel like we did a great job with that this week. And shout out to JT and the O-line for doing their thing.
What happened on what about the interception?
We had vertical routes. They kind of shifted into like a cover 2 look. Backside safety wasn't held. I probably could have done a better job with my eyes with that, but I could have hit it. I just pulled him too far in the middle and gave the safety a chance to intercept it.
What do you think of Josh Downs' tightrope back to get you in there?
Nah, that was surprising as well because I thought he was about to go out of bounds, and then I just see him keep running. I'm like, all right, well, thanks for that.
The 12 straight runs that you all had throughout that game just kind of reset the offense after early interception. You all get rolling on the ground and obviously take off.
I think it's just finding ways, just to make it work. Of course, we don't want to have early turnovers. We don't want to have turnovers at all. But Shane did a great job, calling it. The O-line did a great job of, executing the blocking scheme up front. And then JT, took advantage and did the rest. So it's good when we get to, do things like that.
You're a quarterback. Primarily your job is to throw the ball. But is it any less fun when you win this way?
Nah. Because I know Shane's going to give me a chance to go out there, and run myself. So I'm not mad at it at all. It gives the O-line a chance to work their game and perfect some of their blocking moves up there. So they did a great job with that. And Shane did a great job calling it. So as long as we get the W, I'm not mad at it.
You have a game like that where you go long stretches without throwing. How do you find a way to stay ready for a moment like you had at the end when you have to hit that third and eighth?
Like you just said, being a quarterback, my job is to pass the ball, deliver the ball. So whenever there's an opportunity to do so, I'm expected to, complete passes and make them happen regardless of how long I've been without throwing a pass. So I'm just trying to do my job the best way I can.
This is kind of random to, I guess, squeeze the life out of the opposing team on a play like that. I know you have to run right after just to bleed the clock and know, okay, when y'all get the ball back, it's over.
It's good to execute our situations. That's the main thing because we always harp on situations, being in situations like that where we got to manage the clock, take advantage of it. So it's great whenever we get to, put that product on the field and do so. It's not more so about the opponent, because we feel like if there's anybody on the other side of the ball, as long as we do our job, we should be good.
This is kind of random, but the TV camera showed you warming up with the rugby ball. How long have you done that, and what's the thinking behind that?
I started doing that probably like a month and a half ago maybe. I actually saw Jaden Daniels doing something with a basketball, and I heard something about them, like his hands adjusting to the bigger, elements. So I thought about, getting a rugby ball is kind of football shape, just allowing my hands to adjust to the football or the rugby ball, which is, it being bigger. So once I get the football, it's kind of like a Nerf ball in my hand, and I could just do whatever I need to do with it. Oh yeah, for sure. Sam and Joe, they've been using it with me a little bit, so we feel like it's been helping.
With a ground performance like this and just kind of all of the changes up front for you, how impressed are you with just the way they've been able to evolve and respond to all the adversity on the line?
Next man up mentality. That's what we always have. Regardless of who's in there, we expect them to do their job the right way. Just them dominating today, I know it's good for their morale. It boosts them up, just to let them know that they are the greatest O-line in the NFL right now. So it's just great just to see those guys take advantage of the opportunity and do so.
Just a few weeks ago, you were talking here about how you need to get JT rolling. So it's how refreshing is it to see what he's done these past couple of weeks?
That's great. It just lets us know that we have the offense to put up numbers like that in the rushing game. We just got to match it with the pass game and just be a complete offense. So we're still working on that, but we know our run game is great. We just got to complement everything else.
You mentioned that you look at every game and approach it with a very high level of seriousness, but to still be playing for a playoff spot, what does that mean to you?
We still have an opportunity, with some help from other people, but we're just taking it one game at a time, because it doesn't do us any good if everybody else does what they have to do to help us out, and then we don't go out there and take advantage of it. So we're just thinking about just winning each and every game, that we have left, and just leaving the rest up to God.
Anthony, your defense had 3 turnovers, but 3 takeaways. Kenny had 2. That was the second time he's done that. What's special about him that helps elevate the whole team?
That's great. He's a great leader, a great ball player. He always finds a way to, be where the football is. He put out some hurdle moves today I've never seen him do before, but it's just great just to see our defense, rally together, play strong and physical football, and just be out there making plays. It gives us a chance to go out there and do what we do, and it's just a blessing to have those guys doing their job the right way.
I'm sure you've probably heard by now you've now had the most prolific rushing season for a Colts quarterback. What's that mean for you?
It's great. I feel like that's expected. Everybody knows I can, do decently well on the ground with my legs, but that's a blessing and all. But I want to make sure I'm a complete quarterback. So the turnovers, I got to limit those. And passing the ball, delivering the ball, I'm still trying to grow and be better at that. But it is a blessing for me to have opportunities to get on the ground and make something happen.
What you got here is like you mentioned, this was kind of an expected. You thought you would probably achieve something like that at some point.
I will.
Like that you would have this type of season as a runner, like this standout performance.
Oh yeah, I always want to be able to make plays whenever I can. If it is on the ground, that's what I got to do. The team expects it of me, so I got to go out there and do it. But like I said, I want to be a complete quarterback for the squad, and hopefully I can pair the running with the passing attack and just make it happen.
Did you try to get down to the half-yard line for JT to get that 3rd touchdown, or how do y'all?
I did not, actually. I actually thought I got in, but I'm not mad at it, man. He had a great day today, so he deserves it, and I'm glad he was able to get his numbers up.
That was Colts quarterback Anthony Richardson talking about the 38-30 win over the Tennessee Titans at Lucas Oil Stadium on Sunday. Up next for the Colts, it's a 1 p.m. kickoff game on Sunday. That one is at the New York Giants. Another important game for the Colts, and they've got to take care of their business, see what they can do, and maybe just keep things alive. And this is a bad football team that they're going against, and the Colts have been mostly good against bad football teams, as you would expect. So they need to come away with a win there. That'll be a 1 o'clock game. It'll air on Fox 59 for those of you in the Indianapolis market. So that's what we'll be looking forward to. Chap and Dave, or Dave and Chap, or there will be some mixture of Colts Blue Zone hosts coming together either on Thursday or Friday to preview that game. We've got to kind of figure out and pin down our scheduling. We'll get that figured out for you there. But until then, everyone, again, a victory Monday. Can't really argue with that, no matter how bad it goes sometimes. You cannot look down on a victory Monday. But Merry Christmas to those who celebrate. Happy New Year. Of course, we'll talk to you before the New Year, but we won't talk to you before Christmas. So Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays for all, no matter what you celebrate. For the Colts Blue Zone podcast, I'm Matt Adams. Thanks for listening.